Hello, this is Ben at Harrison Consoles. I'm a product manager here for Mixbus, and I want to demonstrate the features of our new plugin, the XTTG Tom Gate. And the Tom Gate is a gate plugin that is specifically designed to work with your tom-tom drums on a tom kit. They are notoriously hard to gate because you have the loud spill from nearby microphones like the other toms and the snare drum. The snare drum in particular tends to bleed into the tom drums because the snare is so loud compared to the other instruments of the drum kit. So I'm going to demonstrate some of the features of the XTTG. So I have a set of multi-mic'd drums to demonstrate the features of the plugin. I have a high tom track, mid tom, and floor tom, which have been separately mic'd. And I have the snare drum and a pair of overheads. So I'm going to start with the high tom, and I'll add the XTTG plugin by double-clicking here, and I'll type TG on my keyboard, which filters for TG, and I can quickly find the mono version of that plugin to add to this track. So here's the plugin window. We'll quickly look at the features. On the right side, you'll see some typical gate controls. The hold time, that's how long the gate stays open once it is triggered, so that you can make sure and capture the full attack of the drum. And then there's a release time, and that's how long it takes for the gate to close. So you can have a slow, smooth shut off of the gate, or you can make it really short so that it gates very quickly. And then we have the depth of the gate, which tells it how much gain reduction you want to apply when the gate is closed. So you can go anywhere from 48 dB, which is essentially completely cutting off all the sound, all the way to 0, which means that the sound is spilled, all the spill is sent through. Now in the middle we have a threshold slider, and for this particular plugin that's a little bit complicated, so I'll return to that later. The most important and innovative part of the plugin is our spectrum discriminator over here. So in this section we have two buttons, one to learn the sound of the tom-tom drum, and one to learn the sound of the spill, which in our case we're going to train it on the sound of the snare so we don't pick up the snare. And then we have two spectrum curves, which I will demonstrate quickly. If I select a range, I'm going to choose to loop on the toms. And now I'll click Learn Toms. And you see that the tom curve has been recorded. And really the gate can operate just as simply as that. I'll roll through the track now. Now I'm going to make it more drastic so we can really hear the sound of the gate. And I'll roll through our track very quickly. Let's see, I'll increase the depth to 40 dB. Now, at the end of our track, there's a snare hit. So I'm going to roll through that section for a moment. Now, the snare is bleeding through. You can see that the snare is bleeding quite loudly into the tom track. And our gate is opening. So the gate is opening on the 3 high tom hits, but it's also opening on the snare. Now, we don't want that. So I'm going to select the snare. I'm going to zoom in a little bit and select the snare hit. I'm going to loop on that. And now I'm going to click the Learn Spill button. And you hear the gate take effect. Now we see we were getting a full 40 dB of gain reduction on our snare hit that's being looped. So let's roll through the track again. And hopefully we will only be hearing the high tom and we won't hear the snare hit at the end. Okay, that worked wonderfully. The reason it worked is because the plugin has recognized that the peak of the tom hits, the fundamental of the toms, is lower than the snare. And so we see our two spectrum curves here. The red one is the spill that we don't want to hear, and the green one is the tom, is the sound that we do want to hear. Now you'll notice when I play a tom hit, watch the area between the green and the red curves. When the area between the red and the green curves is filled with white from the spectrum of the playback, that's what triggers the gate to fire. And I'll do it again, and why don't you notice, this time look inside the threshold slider, and you'll notice a dot appear. Okay, there's a green dot that appeared right about here. The dot represents how much of this shape, of this curve between the tom sound and the snare sound is being filled. In our case, the tom sound, the sound is filling almost completely with white. So the discriminator picks that up at quite a high level. But this threshold slider allows us to change at what level we want to trigger. So if I want the gate to be even more discriminating, I'll turn the threshold really high. See, we're not even getting some of the softer high tom hits, so I'll have to reduce that a little bit so that I pick up the toms again. So that's how we adjust the threshold, and that's normally using a threshold right in the middle is all you'll need. But occasionally if you have softer drum hits that you need to be able to recover, or if you have a snare drum or a spill that is really aggressive, then you might have to increase the threshold so that the discriminator works harder to only trigger on the tom sound. This plugin is also smart enough to recognize the transient of the tom, and it won't trigger when the tom is just resonating from nearby hits. Now you might ask, why would I use this gate plugin instead of just editing the tracks and cutting out the tom sounds? Well, the nice thing about using the plugin is that after you've gated all your toms, you have the gate controls, the hold and release and depth time, to help you with your mix. If you edit the tracks, then you've already cut out the sections of bleed, and you've already essentially adjusted the hold and release times, and you have to go back and re-edit those if you want to change the sound that you achieved with your toms. So now with my gate set, I can adjust the hold time. I can increase the hold time and increase the release time. Or I can make those really short. And if I make those really short, you'll hear a very tightly gated sound. So here's where it gets cool. If I add the tom gate to each of my tom tracks, I can now switch over to the mixer window. And on each of the plugins, I can show my release slider right in the mixer strip. And I have control over the release time for each of these plugins. So I can make the sound of my toms very dry, or I can increase the release time and give myself a little more bleed. Now when I bring the overheads back in, I can pan the toms to roughly match the pan locations, and we're going to blend in the overhead and the toms, and I've added some reverb to the tom, just the tom attack. So I'll make this shorter, make my release time really short and tight again. And now just the attacks of these drums is going to feed out to the reverb, gives it a little different sound. So all kinds of cool artistic things you can do, all from the mixer without having to get into the editor and cut things up. This also has some advantages because if you later make edits, the gate plugins will continue to work, or if you switch to different takes or different playlists on those tracks, the gate still applies and you don't have to go re-edit those. So using a gate plugin if you can get it to really work on a tom, is actually a lot easier for the mix than editing it. But the trick with toms is dealing with the spill from all the nearby microphones. So the XT-TG plugin is specifically designed to help you do these kinds of artistic things with your tom-tom drums. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.